First of all, we're going to go through here, and we're going to have time for questions once we get done. But first of all, we want to go through each of you. We'll just go boom, boom, boom down the line. Each of you in like less than a minute or so. Can you tell me the circumstances, number one, that led you to Monterey and the Monterey Pop in 1967?
I was blessed to meet and work under a great photographer named Robert Frank. And borrowing from his vision, I decided to document as much as I could the 60s, as much as I did in the Americans. I was living in Big Sur that winter, took a break from a place that Henry and I know as the Farm. And Peter Palafian and Russell Gilliam, who was a student, co-student at LA City College, said, we're doing this music festival, and do you know any carpenters in Big Sur? And I said, yeah, I know them all, you know, especially the ones that are sober. So he said, great, put a crew of 10 together, and you'll meet Chip Monk. And for 2 weeks before the festival, we banged nails, hung lights. And if I may, I got to applaud Chip Monk. He's the guy that made it happen. He had us build 10-foot risers with rubber lock wheels, so we could wheel one set of drums off and wheel the next set on, and there was a very small gap between the bands, and that really made it happen. When it started, they said, oh, we don't have any tickets. You want to be part of the deck crew and be on stage for the whole thing? I said, oh, yeah, please. So that's how I got there.
Next.
Okay, my name is Elaine Mayes. I was living, back up a little bit, I was living in Mill Valley, California, and I went to the Fantasy Fair and I photographed it. And I met somebody there who said he was doing a book about the Haight-Ashbury. Had I ever been taking pictures? I said, yeah, I come over there, I hang out over there. And he said, well, show them to me. So I went to where he lived, which was a commune on Central Street, and I moved in. And I moved in because I wanted to photograph the scene, and that was the best way to do it, was to be actually living there. So I lived in the Haight-Ashbury for about a year and a half. And I'm not really a music photographer. I did it only for 2 years, and I've been doing art photography ever since, and I taught photography for 35 years at various institutions around the country, and I'm still a photographer.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
My name is Lisa Law, and Tom and I were at the Fantasy Fair with our teepee, and it was a trip tent for those that wanted to kind of relax after they had taken a little too much acid. So we were there for that, and then we were asked to come to the Monterey Pop Festival. And we were part of the front crew that came early, and we talked with the Sheriff Marinella. Here's a picture of Sheriff Marinella. And this is us meeting with him. And we said, listen, you shouldn't bust anybody for taking acid or smoking dope, because you'd have to bust everybody. So it's better that you just let it go and leave them alone, and you'll see that everybody's going to get along. And they did that. And what happened was they did bust 2 people, and they were rednecks who were picking on hippies, drunken rednecks who were picking on hippies, 2 of them. So yeah, that's how we had a very peaceful concert. And so we set up our teepee, and you could see that in the movie, Tom putting the teepee up and me standing there. And I was pregnant with my daughter, Pilar. There, she's right in the back, right there. We're in the
Hi,
white
Pilar.
house. That's Pilar. Yeah. And so we were there most of the time with the teepee, taking care of the people that needed centering.
Okay, Ed?
My name is Ed Caraeff. In June of 1967, I was a high school student at Westchester High School by LAX.
Wow.
I had just turned 17. Mr. Mead, my photography teacher, is here.
Yay, wonderful. Yes.
I was, at that time, I was just interested in really making interesting images that usually started with a photograph. I was developing all my own film and doing all my own prints and manipulating everything. In my weekends, I would go to Hollywood, go to rock shows, buy a ticket, walk down to the front and take photographs. I started to sell my photographs to a giveaway local AM radio station, weekly rag, you would almost say, a little thing. They would buy my black and white live shots. I heard about the concert up here was happening. It seemed like a great place to get lots of photographs of bands, but I had never been this far away from home without one of my parents. So, and no one, even though it says friends from high school went with me, that's not true. I went with some Hollywood friends that I had met at concerts and shows, older than me and more connected than me. And we came up here from LA in a big four-door boat that someone drove. I think there were 7 of us in the car. I didn't know there was no room, no motels to stay in. Probably wouldn't have come. And I did have a photo pass issued by this local radio station, but when I came up here and gave them my name, they said that they'd given my pass out already. And that's because someone else who knew I was coming had gotten here before me and used my name to take my pass. I explained the situation. They went and got Derek Taylor, who was doing PR, and he, issued my pass. All was fine. So I'm in the photo pass, and I realized by then, because I have photographed a lot of concerts, that shooting up at people, you just get their noses, and it's not good. So one day in the pit, while no one was on stage, I saw one folding chair, just like you're sitting on. It was way off in the distance. So that became the chair that I would unfold, push against the stage, and stand on it. So when I took the photo of Jimi Hendrix burning his guitar, I'm like this close to him, really, And actually, as Tom has mentioned, because I was high and he came down, it's an interesting angle. I had never shot color film in my life, and I didn't shoot at that time. And that's my story. The photo that became so famous, no one cared about for 20 years, trust me. Yeah. I mean, it was published, but no one ever said, wow, you got a good shot. I never said, wow, I got a good shot. No one ever made a big deal of this Jimi Hendrix burning guitar until one day, and by then I was a photographer for about 14 years, and then I answered an ad in the Sunday New York Times to be a chef. So I was on my second chef job up in Santa Cruz. And the phone rang one day about 4 o'clock, and I said, hello, this is no mobile phones. This is in 1987. Yeah. Right, thank you. In 1987, the phone rang. I was already a chef, and they said, Ed Caraeff. I said, yeah, and the woman said, well, you're hard to get a hold of, because I did all my work with an unlisted phone number, no portfolio, no agents. Just word of mouth. I worked for 14 years. So she said, Jan Wenner wants to talk to you. And Jan Wenner gets on the phone like, I met him once, maybe in San Francisco, but he's like my best friend. It's great, And he says, I'm doing a special Rolling Stone issue. It's not going to say anything on the cover except live, and it's going to be an issue on the best live rock and roll shows of all time. And he says, for the cover, I've got it down to 2 shots, and I want to use your shot of Jimi Hendrix burning the guitar. That's exactly what he said. And I know exactly the first words out of my mouth were, what's the other shot? Wouldn't you be curious? Yeah. And he said, oh, it's a shot of Pete Townsend doing the windmill.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I said, he does that every show.
Love that. Tom O'Neal.
I mean, no, I guess it seems like I'm negotiating now, because how much you paying me to do this, Winter? But he said, what I want to do is I want to colorize it. He asked me, he said I want to make color in it, and then we talked price. And he did it. I usually don't talk money. That's kind of tacky, So it was fine. I mean, it was good. Well, and it was used again because they used it again years later. So then it was famous. That's the point of that story. Nobody cared about it, trust me. No one came over to me afterwards and said, you had a good angle on that chair, but you got a good shot. No one said, I never thought anything about it. I didn't think, I can't wait to see that one. I do remember that as I was shooting him, he was burning it. I was advancing it, and I knew it was getting towards the end, and it stopped. But at that point, I mean, he's smashing a guitar right in front of me. It just seemed like I should hold the camera here, and kind of be like this, because it just seemed really dangerous. And a week after Monterey, Jimmy came to Hollywood. And so I left school during lunch hour, and I had edited my shots. I didn't show contact sheets. I would go in and edit, make prints, do special effects, tilt the easel, high contrast. So I left high school, left Mr. Mead, and I drive up to a motel, two-story motel on Sunset, where he was staying, and walked in about 11:30 with an envelope of prints, went to the desk, and said, is Jimi Hendrix staying here? And the guy was on the phone. He said, he's out by the pool. So I walked right through, right down from where Tower Records was. There was a two-story motel. And I walk, and there's Jimi Hendrix wearing nothing but a blue, by the pool, like a blue Speedo. And he had what I thought was a cocktail in one hand and a cigarette. And there were two women there in bikinis. And me. And I showed him, I started showing him the prints, and everything was cool and groovy, and this is, these women are looking. And he says, let me call my manager. And he walks to a house phone on the wall, and we're sitting there, and from upstairs I see a door open, and a guy comes out with a suit and tie, and walks, and then comes down right at us, and that was Michael Jeffries. And to wind up that part of the story, I got in, to all the shows since then, backstage. And the next day I came back to that motel in my parents' car and drove Jimi Hendrix to John and Michelle Phillips' house for a party. And when we got there, we walked in, he and I, there was a room with a pool table, and no one was in it. We played in the pool.
Ed, could you tell us about the Jimi Hendrix photo? Hey, wait.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
We'll get back to you.
I got to Monterey in like a four-door car, and I was sitting in the back seat. That's how I got to Monterey.
Tom O'Neal.
You got carried away, didn't you?
Tom, you got 15 seconds.
We were, Ed and I were about 15.
We have another connection.
Yeah, but
wife says-
we became friends after that down in LA, and we've been friends ever since. And we had dinner the other night, and we were swapping stories. And I've heard this story a number of times that he just told you, and I am still blown away by it. I mean, to walk up to Jimi Hendrix when he's sitting by a pool with two beautiful women, and you want to show him your photos, man, you got cojones. I couldn't do that.
But wait, no.
You had to be in high school.
No.
Because
Tom, what brought you to
They weren't
Monterey
famous.
50 years ago?
No, it just, okay, well that, I was so intrigued by hearing it again, I've lost my train of thought. I had something I was going to say, but basically for me, I was a frustrated fine art major. I basically, in college, had studied painting and design, no photography, except for one little design course where for about 6 weeks, I borrowed the professor's Nikon, and we went out and I shot, I did street photography, and that was it. But in terms of the technical stuff and all that, I really kind of stayed away from all that. And I found myself a year or so later out here in California, and I was living in Big Sur at the time, and still I was searching. I had been taking pictures, and I had even taken a photo job working for a local plastic surgeon where I was taking pre-op and post-op photos. Kind of boring, but this surgeon gave me a chance to build a darkroom in his clinic, which is right up the street here on Pacific. And so I started to experiment in photography, but using my painting and design background. So I was doing a lot of experimentation with textures and hand painting on the photograph, and messing around with the chemicals and everything. So it wasn't traditional photography that I was really working with. And then I got myself, I was in Carmel, and I walked into a record store on Dolores. It's a different store today, but when I drive by it, I just go, that's where it started. And I remember going in there, and I picked up an album cover. It was a record store, like I said, and there was no internet, and there was no iTunes, so it was kind of a cool thing to kind of see what was going on with the music, you know, and go into a record store and go through the racks, and top 25%, there's, you know, 'cause, well, we designed them later on, we knew that's why they had to be. And so I'm flipping through, and I pull out this album for the Mamas and Papas.
Yeah.
And it's called Deliver. And it's a shot of them in a swimming pool, and they're holding up this hat, and it has 4 holes in it, it's full of water, and they're all drinking water out of the hat. I looked at that, and I said, this is it. Literally, I had this epiphany at them. Really, I mean, I'm getting a little goosebumps because it was that powerful within me. And I looked at it, and I said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to be a rock and roll photographer.
Yeah.
Turned around. Who is this guy? Guy Webster. Okay, I want to be him. I want to be him. I want to be. Who's this guy in the back? Here's more photos. Who's this guy? Oh, Henry Diltz. Okay, I want to be him. I want to be him. Okay, I want to be a rock and roll photographer. Now, sorry, Lou, I didn't buy the album. You lost the sale. Because I was living in Mixer. I didn't have $2.14 to pay for it. But anyway, I put it back. I remember walking outside. 10
Album
o'clock.
was $2.14?
Well, what were they then? It's cheap, really nothing.
Yeah.
Wow.
$2. Yeah, anyway, so I go outside. I remember the sun hitting me, and I was going, this is fantastic. I know what I'm going to do. How the hell am I going to do this? I don't know anybody in the music business. I had been going up to the Fillmore. I'd seen bands like Jefferson Airplane and The Dead, Paul Butterfield. And I knew the music, and I knew I wanted to do this, but what am I going to do? Well, it was shortly after that there was an article in the paper in the Monterey Herald, and it talked about this Monterey International Pop Festival. And the producers, it was a board of governors, they were making a trip up from Los Angeles to come up and talk to Minnie Coyle, the mayor, and Chief Marinello, the police chief, and board of supervisors, Sam Caraeff, people like that, to talk about, you know, all the stuff you got to do to put on this event. And I thought, wow. And one of the people coming up was a guy by the name of Terry Melcher.
Nice.
He was also part of this group. Terry, love you. Terry's mom lives out off of Carmel Valley Road, Doris Day. Terry and I grew up in Beverly Hills. Terry and I went to school together from the 2nd grade for a few years, and then later on in high school. So I knew him, so I thought, wow, if I could get in touch with Lou Adler through Terry, how can I do this? Lou has to see something that he'll relate to. So I found a picture, just by accident, I found this shot of the Mamas and Papas in Playboy magazine, of all things. They had done an article on them. So I copied the photograph, not trying to plagiarize it. It was here's my buddy Guy Webster that I later would meet. His photo, I copied it, and then I did a very kind of psychedelic effect to it. And I stood out, I took that, printed it up, and when I knew the limo, I knew what time that Lou and his guys would be coming up to the city hall, right across the street, basically. So I stood out there all by myself, waiting, and said, is this what I want to do? Is this going to happen? I see the limo, opens up, and I have never seen more strange-looking, very wealthy hippies ever. I mean... And still, one of the best dressed guys in the room is right back there, Lou Adler, all the time, man. You do it, man. But John Phillips, he's 6'5". He's got a crazy hat. Lou's got a big white fedora on. They've got bell bottoms that go for miles, patent leather, white patent leather shoes, belts this wide. And you don't remember this, do you? But anyway, so they get out, and I'm going, whoa, man, this is amazing. And I'm looking for my friend, Terry Melcher. I've got my photo. And I want to show it to him. And so Terry does not get out of the car. So I know that I have to come up with something very, very quickly. So here comes Lou, and I go, Lou, can I show you something? And I show him this photo right here. And he looks at it, and he goes, oh, that's cool. Come on in. So I follow this group. Johnny Rivers was with him, and Michelle. And of course, John and Lou, and they go in, and all of a sudden, I don't want to say a thing. Somebody said, do you take pictures? Take pictures? Oh my God, I just wanted to blend into the wall. So So it was not a fun moment with what these guys had to go through with the city of Monterey. It was, anyway, and it was kind of tense. Anyway, they come out, and immediately I asked Lou, I said, is there any way that I could get some credentials so I could take more pictures for you and I could do this kind of technique that you like? And he said, see Derek Taylor. I felt like the world had been given to me. So sure enough, I go over to the Fair Downs, I find Derek Taylor. It was just so perfect and so easy. And I had these credentials. I was so excited. Now, the second part of this, I see a friend of mine also that I had known in growing up and going to school in Beverly Hills, a woman by the name of Sybil Chapelet, living in Carmel. She now lives in Hawaii, where she stood up with me next as my best woman at the wedding 35 years ago when Molly and I got married. Anyway, so I tell her that I'm going to shoot the Monterey Pop Festival. I was so excited about it. She says, if you do, take pictures of David Crosby and Hugh Masekela and the Byrds, and I'll make sure that you get your pictures seen by the right person, because she knew the manager at the time for the Byrds and Masekela. So I said, now I've got an assignment. And I also wanted to keep Lou happy, and I wanted to get some shots of the mamas and papas. So I go with my own on-spec mission. And as far as anything else, I don't know. Do I really want to do that? So I specifically, was focused on getting pictures of David Crosby, and never knowing that I would have a long-term relationship. I would later go on and do my first Byrds cover, which got rejected. A year later, Crosby, Stills, and Nash, Deja Vu, and Four-Way Street, and all kinds of other stuff.
Okay, that's good. Now, next.
Go ahead, plug the book now, because I can see we're going to run out of time.
That's what started it.
The question was,
Tom,
Thank you, Lisa. Oh, yeah.
Tom, that's Tom.
Outside,
For those of you who don't know,
$29.95.
hold it up again, Tom. For those of you who don't know, Tom shot
We
the
all have books.
iconic.
We all have books out there. Buy them all.
The iconic Crosby, Stills, and Nash. One of the greatest album covers of all time, Tom O'Neal. Okay? Fred, go ahead.
finally, Fred.
Thank you.
Fred, what brought you to Monterey? Back 51 years ago.
You got
My
30
name-
seconds.
My name's Fred Arellano, and in May of 1967, I was in my senior year in high school. I was a journalism major. I worked on the yearbook, and I worked on the Galleon newspaper. I was the head photographer. And I took photography from a gentleman named Lou Paracini, who was a mentor to me. And somebody came down from San Francisco to our photography class and said, there's going to be a big festival coming up next month, and we're looking for people to work, ushers, drivers, anybody that's into photographers, whatever you can offer. So I said, I'll do it. Okay, so I graduate from high school. We have our all-night senior party, and the next day was the first day of Monterey Pop, and I walk into the production office right at the head of the fairgrounds there, and it is complete pandemonium. Michelle Phillips is on the phone, John's running around back and forth, and I just walked in to say, what is it that you want me to do? And this gentleman walks up to me and he says, do you live here? I went, yes. He goes, well, my name's Jan Wenner. I just started a magazine in San Francisco called Rolling Stone, and I was wondering, do you know how to get to the airport? I said, didn't you fly in? He goes, no, I drove down from San Francisco last night. I said, well, the airport's right up the road. So the next thing I know, we jump in the car and we drive up to the airport. Now, back in those days, you could drive right out on the runway, okay? So we drive out to the runway, and here comes this Learjet. Now, I have never even seen a Learjet before, and this thing lands, and it taxis around, and the door opens, and out comes Lou Adler and John Phillips, and that's the photograph right there on the wall.
Nice.
And if you look carefully on that Learjet, there is no tail number, and the reason is that was one of the first jets that William Lear built. So at this point, my head is spinning, okay? I'm like 18 years old, and these are people that I've heard of, and you know, I knew I was a big fan of the Mamas and the Papas. So I get this shot. We drive back down to the fairgrounds, and you know, I said something stupid like "Welcome to Monterey." So we get there, and it's about 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday. The association is doing their sound check. And that's one of the few bands I've ever heard that actually sounded better live.
Along came Mary.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, it was a feeling of the Mardi Gras, a snake oil show, a carnival, all rolled into one. And, you know, even before the festival started, we saw trucks starting to pull into Monterey and our little podunk town. And Frank Marinello, the chief of police at the time, I remember some of the acrimonious meetings between Lou and John Phillips and the mayor, Minnie Coyle, oh my God, at the Mark Thomas Inn. And you know, all of a sudden, everything kind of congealed and fell into place. And Frank Marinello put the entire Monterey police force on high tactical alert. This was on Thursday. On Saturday, he sent over half of them home. And the cops go, we've seen more action at PTA meetings, you know? And there was a lot of people, but the cops just kind of looked the other way and said, hey, you know, what are we gonna do, arrest 20,000 people? You know? And Monterey Pop was the template of all the other festivals since then. And the father of the Monterey Pop Festival was a guy named Alan Parisier. And he went to the Monterey Jazz Festival, and he's looking around going, now this is really cool. This legitimizes jazz. It's well organized. They got the little vendors over here, and everybody's partying and dressed really nice. And he goes, why can't we do this for rock and roll? And he ended up selling the idea to Mr. Adler and John Phillips. And those two gentlemen put the entire pop festival together in 7 weeks. No cell phones, no computers, no fax machines. All they had was Western Union and the telephone. And that in itself is just one of the most amazing
Fun to
things
use those.
ever. And
Next question.
Okay, let's try and we're going to try and move it along a little faster here. Okay, first of all, Henry, I want to ask you quickly, and this is for each of you. Did you realize at the time that this was going to be something we'd celebrate 50 years later, or was it, be honest, when you stepped into it, was it just another rock and roll event?
Well, yes and no. No, it wasn't just another rock and roll thing. You never know at the time that it's going to be celebrated years later. You never think that.
Yeah.
You know, it's just great. And I mean, it was the first festival. You know, we'd have stand-ins in the park, and, you know, we'd have, you know, the Hollywood Bowl Festival. But this was, I mean, how many acts were there? Was 40?
He wasn't there.
32.
Wasn't there.
32.
No, but I mean, is that right? 32. But, you know, the whole Northern California thing, I was a Southern California guy. I knew the Association of Buffalo Springfield, the Byrds, the Mamas and Papas, but I didn't know Janis. I didn't know, you know, the Grateful Dead.
The Dead.
Those. So that was amazing.
Didn't the Dead and Janis ever get out of town?
I didn't see him in L.A., so
Yeah.
I don't know, you know. But I want to say one thing. As photographers, we're there photographing, and of course we hear the music. If I do a Neil Young concert, people say, oh, what did he play? And I say, I don't know. I mean, I was there, but I was, you know, I heard it all. Never know. Same thing there.
So if we ask what playlist,
song?
I don't know, yeah.
But on the way here today, I listened to the CD, and I heard a couple of songs that absolutely blew my mind. I mean, I did see Otis Redding, of course, and it blew everybody away. But today, on the way here, a couple hours ago, I heard I've Been Loving You So Long. just brought tears to my eyes. And then I heard Jimi Hendrix, and on that CD of the festival, everyone has one song, and his song is Like a Rolling Stone.
Yeah.
It's not the one he lit his guitar on fire. It's not, but it also brought tears to my eyes. It was so amazing. I thought, wow.
Yeah,
It was
exactly.
there.
Yeah.
And now I'm really hearing this for the first time.
That's right.
You know, I listened.
Jerry, what brings tears to your eyes when you think about Monterey Pop?
It was 50 years ago. But I feel we're all blessed to be here to reflect on that, magical time. I grew up in New York, graduated Columbia University in '59, and I was mainly a jazz club devotee, and to go to the Five Spot and watch Thelonious Monk or Mingus or any of those guys, that was my sort of, music introduction to, when I came to California and got my degree in theater, I was mainly interested in jazz and classical music. So when I got to Monterey, although there was one moment that sort of set the stage, Russell Gilliam, Michelle's sister, was a close friend. And she said, oh, my sister's here with her friends, and they're going into the recording studio next week.
Yeah.
And, come on, let's go visit them. And they were in an unfurnished flat, near the Fairfax area. Just mattresses on the floor and orange crates for coffee tables. And,
Gotcha.
and Denny's sitting in a corner, and he's going like, so what are you guys doing? Oh, I'm going to show you. He said, oh, Monday. I said, wow. And then Cass comes out of the bedroom, and John and Michelle comes out of the kitchen, and the harmony just blew me away, So, I said, oh, you guys are great. I'm going to New York to work with Robert Frank, but I think you got some hits on your hands. And then I'm in New York. Oh, the #1 tune in the country, California Dreaming. When I got to Monterey, I really wasn't in the music biz or following it that closely. But act after act, I said, wow, this is really amazing stuff, And to me, I was there personally as a big fan of Ravi Shankar. And his performance to me was probably one of the greatest performances I've ever been witness to.
Absolutely.
It was drizzly rainy that morning. And as he started to tune up, God, this sounds like a screenwriter writing this. There was a little crack in the clouds, and a shaft of sunlight hits the audience, and everybody's going, "Whoa, what's going on here?" and then they were tuning. He and Alaraka and his sister, I believe, was on the drone, and then a plane takes off from Monterey Airport, and he, most people would have stopped and waited for the plane to leave and then continued. On the sitar, he picked up the exact same sound as the plane and then went into the raga. And everybody's going, whoa.
Heavy, dude.
I floated around taking pictures of people in the audience listening to him. The empty stage shot, I shot early in the morning, but I went back to the same spot. And there are guys sitting there with feathers in their hair like little Indians and stuff. With Ravi playing, and then when it was over, the place exploded. I mean, you can hear a pin drop during his performance. Yes. But when it was over, and he took that bow that I have there with a seat, the place just exploded. I mean, it was a transcendental, to borrow a phrase, experience. So on that level, I was satisfied.
Bingo.
And then Peter Palafian comes to me, and he says, hey, there's a guy playing tonight. Be sure to get a roll, get some shots of him in color if you can. I said, I shot my wad on Ravi, and I don't have any more film. He says, I don't care, borrow. So I go to my friend Henry Diltz. I said, Henry, could you spare a roll, And I was basically a black and white photographer. So he hands me a roll of Ektachrome daylight film. And I said, what are you shooting at? He says, 5.6 at 125th. I said, dynamite, man, And I'm on stage. I had, wheeled Mitch Mitchell's with the rest of the crew, his drum set out. This is right after the Who wrecked the stage,
Yeah.
And Ravi's sitting somewhere going, oh my God, these people and their instruments, And then, Hendrix, the minute he just turned to his speakers and played a few notes, everybody went another whoa moment, what is this? I've never heard anything like this before. And then he comes out and goes, dun, 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 dun. And he starts out with a feathered boa, and he takes that off, and then he takes his jacket off in between songs. And by the end, there's an expression. I said, don't think, shoot.
Yeah.
At the very end, he's on his knees with a can of Ronson lighter fluid. And the frame I have of him is really, I had a 50 millimeter Pentax lens on. And it's not like a bayonet mount Nikon. You had to unscrew the lens and put another one. There's no time. With the 50, I shot it. It's only about 2/3 of the frame, so it can't get blown up too big. And I said, wow, this is like shooting fish in a barrel. This is good stuff, And then when it was over, I think everybody would agree. Our stuff went into boxes. And, there was...
Stayed there for years?
It stayed there for years, and then all of a sudden, here we are,
It was undiscovered for many years. Lisa.
So the one
Go
last
ahead.
thing, one tag. Not Lisa, Elaine.
Elaine first.
Okay, just one last tag.
Yeah.
Okay. I recently saw the Buena Vista Adios movie, which followed the Buena Vista Social Club movie. And in it, Compe Segundo says something. He says, the flowers of life, they come sooner or later. But be alert, because when they come, they may not come again.
Wow.
And that's how I feel about Monterey.
Very good.
Elaine, other than running out of film, what about today's photography equipment would have helped you or hindered you back then?
Oh, would have helped a lot.
Go ahead.
Yeah, end of
Well,
story.
one thing about photographing, if we're going to change the subject.
Go right ahead.
Well, first of all, film wasn't very fast. And I very carefully thought about what I would do, having decided to photograph every musician because the Hullabaloo magazine didn't tell me what to do. So I could do whatever I wanted. I said, okay, every musician's going to get a picture. And I was using Tri-X film, and I was probably pushing it, which you shouldn't do. I learned that later. And so I learned, and I'd been photographing jazz before that. If you want to photograph this kind of thing, what you have to do is wait for the right moment. And the right moment in those days with slow film is when something peaks, when it goes like this, because in between you're going to get a blur. So I wanted sharp pictures. So I was very, very careful about when I took the pictures, which is why they're sort of quiet rather than loud. But that's one thing. The other thing is I shot infrared film, and there's one over there, which is not about the musicians, but that's about being backstage. And I thought that infrared film would make it look psychedelic. And so I had an assignment to photograph fall in the summertime. So you put an orange filter on color infrared film, and you get fall colors. And I thought, okay, that's kind of psychedelic. So I shot several rolls of infrared film in order to get a psychedelic appearance here. Anyway, in terms of what this mattered or not, and whether it affected me and how important it was, my real feeling about it is that I was on the move. I was always transitioning. I've done it my entire life. I was a rock and roll photographer for 2 years. I moved on to teach photography and become a so-called art photographer. And I always loved new things, being present, and I always loved music. I'd studied music before I studied art. So I just thought, wow, here's more music to photograph. And so the other story, which is kind of interesting, is that I came here with Jim Marshall's girlfriend, Gibby Folger, in her little car. And Jim had an assignment for Look magazine to photograph Ravi Shankar. And he had the motel room. And all of us, we were all pals. People were very friendly then, kind of like this group right here.
Yeah.
It wasn't competitive. It was like you kind of support people. So Jim had the motel room. We all moved in there. There were 6 of us in one bed.
It was a big bed.
Is that a king size?
No, it was a double bed.
Yikes.
Anyway, it was an adventure. The pictures went into the box just like everybody else's. I tried to sell one of Ravi Shankar to Capitol, but they didn't want it. There was somebody else wanted another one. And I didn't even know that I was Jimi Hendrix that I'd photographed at the flower stand. I didn't know who he was. So he was a colorful hippie. I didn't even figure that out till Hullabaloo ordered the picture. And then I realized the guy who smashed his guitar was the same one I'd photographed in the flower stand. And so it was an adventure. It was a very wonderful, fun time. It propelled me into a lot of things in terms of people and places and other things I did in my life. But mostly, it gave me the opportunity to do what I wanted to do and be present and photograph all those great music. And I loved everything. I had the best time. It was wonderful.
Lisa.
Your original question was, did you know that was going to be in
Yeah.
Okay. So,
Did you realize it was going to be as big as it's come to be?
okay, so I started shooting. Frank Werber gave me my first good camera. It was a Honeywell Pentax. And I was taking classes at College of Marin. And so I started shooting for him. And I shot the Kingston Trio, the Wee Five, the Mystery Trend, Sons of Champlin, and I went to a Beatles concert, and I had backstage passes, and I was shooting right there, right in front. Right? The second show, they had cyclone fence up, but the first show, they just had the police holding their hands, and boy, it was wild, screaming girls. You couldn't hear a word of any of the songs. And then I went to a Peter, Paul and Mary concert, shot that with him, and he was the manager of the Kingston Trio. So I fell in love with the Peter, Paul and Mary road manager. That was Tom Law. So between the two of us, we knew everybody on the East Coast and the West Coast. And I was shooting Cow Palace events. So by the time I did the Fantasy Fair, Haight-Ashbury, Human Being, Golden Gate Park, shot Janis Joplin for her poster that Victor Moscoso did. I was really into rock and roll photography. I was really going for it. And by the time I got to Monterey Pop, I knew what was happening and I knew how important it was. And I kept my negatives in little boxes. So I kept everything from the time I was 6 years old. That's when I started shooting. My father gave me the first camera, a little Brownie. I kept everything. I'm a rat pack. What I went? Pack rat? A rat pack. I'm part of the rat pack.
Pack rat.
Yeah, pack rat. So I kept everything in every slide, every single thing I have. And I still have it today in giant sheds. So by the time I got to Monterey Pop, I knew how important it was. But the only problem with Monterey Pop is that my dog gave birth to a puppy and couldn't nurse it, and I had to take care of the puppy the entire time. So I was shooting the teepee and what's going on around our teepee, and I shot Ravi Shankar and I shot backstage, but I didn't shoot the groups because I was too busy taking care of the people who were tripping out in the teepee and taking care of the little puppy.
Ed. I'm going to go off the track. Monterey Pop is remembered so positively, so much positively. Not long after that, there was Altamont, which is the second biggest Northern California event.
Yeah, really glad I didn't go to that.
Me too.
Okay, what happened? Well, we know, what happened there was the Hells Angels. Is that the difference? What, compare the two. Is there any comparison?
Well, I can't really because after Monterey, I went back and finished school, and then something happened to me that really changed my relationship with music and rock and roll. I started to do record album covers. Just 2 months after Monterey, I shot color film for the first time when I photographed the record cover for Strawberry Alarm Clock, Incense and Peppermints. So then another door opened, and that's the way I went rather than going to all the shows and going to shoot the live stuff. I realized that if I could coordinate what the band wore and where I photographed them and control the lighting, and so I kind of went that way, more into packaging and working with bands that way. and started to really not go to shows and photograph.
Really?
Anyway,
yeah.
Woodstock came before
Yes.
Yeah, well, yeah, Woodstock, of course, was before. Somebody once told me Woodstock
Come on.
was known for the number of people. Monterey is actually known for the music.
Okay,
What happened?
Tom, go ahead.
I know what happened.
Lou's best way of saying it, which I like, is that it's close. Monterey is remembered for the music, and Woodstock is remembered for the weather.
Yeah.
Altamont is remembered for the violence.
Yeah.
So that's,
Yeah, but I think to
Go ahead.
answer your question.
Yes, Elaine.
I was living in the Haight, and all of a sudden, it was the summer of love. It was the thing that the press wrote about and brought all these people there. And meanwhile, the drugs had become illegal, and all of a sudden there was heroin, and there were other drugs that made people crazy. And so the scene completely fell apart. That's what
Okay,
happened.
drugs were certainly part of the culture back then. Tom?
Yeah.
Was that a part of Monterey Pop, or just a part of culture back then?
Both.
both, yeah. It was.
But it wasn't heroin.
But it wasn't heroin.
No, it wasn't.
No.
Okay.
It
And
wasn't
the heroin, though,
amphetamines
quite honestly,
either.
the heroin was basically from the heroin dealers in the Haight. And when there was this huge influx of young kids
Yes.
starting to literally invade the Haight, and Stanley Osley had this pure
Osley
LSD,
acid,
on
yeah.
his acid, his formula for acid, and it was very prevalent. And when the drug dealers saw this and saw this incredible amount of young minds taking this LSD, they got a hold of this and they said, wait a minute, look at this, it's just, we can mix with this, we can cut it. And that's when the bad acid started around. But that got them back in there. They realized they had a brand new potential for a market right here. And that's when the heroin started to get in there, because it was, the people called it the staircasing drugs.
Yeah.
And
Leads to the harder stuff.
There's heroin is always there
and the-
somewhere.
Ed?
Yeah, and the thing of it is, in 1967, 66, people in Monterey were to a point where they were just starting to smoke a little pot.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much the drug of choice at the Monterey Pop Festival. And there were a little psychedelics involved, but no hard drugs. And I have to give a lot of credit to the Monterey Police Department, because they literally looked the other way. I was in a car smoking with about 3 or 4 other people, and we opened the door and this huge cloud of smoke, and I look and there's 2 cops standing right there, and I just saw the cell doors swing shut, and the cop says, how you doing?
Yeah.
I'm fine. And, you know, I think people that were smoking pot, there was more, because at this time, Vietnam was raging.
Sure.
We had the civil rights movement going on. There was a lot of turmoil.
Smothers Brothers?
Yeah, and you know, and the people, like Tom said, the people in Monterey, everybody put their differences aside, and they came for one thing, which was the music.
Yeah.
That's right.
And you know, when Ravi Shankar came on stage on Sunday, I actually even got my mom to come down with
You
my
took your
brother.
mom to Monterey Pop?
Yeah, with
Good for you.
my sister and my brother.
Wonderful.
Debbie was just what, 7 or 8.
Yeah.
But anyway, the point of the matter is, I saw generations of people there to see Ravi. I had never heard of him before, and I bought one of his records, and I'm listening to it. My mother says, "What the hell is that?" And I said, "Sit down and listen." So she goes to the show, and Ravi starts playing, and the people are clapping. Finally, he gets on the mic and he goes, if you people like my tuning up, wait till I really start to play. The audience went crazy, and he had the audience in the palm of his hand.
Yeah.
And he started playing at like 1:30 in the afternoon. He played for 3.5 hours. And people were just standing there going, like, what is it? And it was like an alien, but he opened the world up to a whole different genre of music, of Eastern music. And as you know, George Harrison from the Beatles took lessons from Ravi Shankar. Brian Jones, the founder of the Rolling Stones, he made a very big impact on the music and everything. But we all knew that we were part of something very, very special. And for me, it was almost like a religious experience. I'll never forget the night that Hendrix walked on that stage. And you got to remember, the Monterey Arena was built in 1937, and it is in essence a very large, dry, wooden box. Okay.
And it is still there for those of you from out of town. Same stage, it's all still there.
So here comes this guy with lighter fluid, and the fire marshal is standing there, and his eyes are the size of saucers.
He's right next to Lou.
And
Lou Adler had to hold the fire marshal back.
Yeah, because Lou tells the guy, if you go out on that stage, you are going to cause a riot. And the fire marshal's got this fire extinguisher. What the hell is this guy doing? And I'll tell you this, about 25 years ago, somebody took a little torch and they scorched the stage and wrote, "Give me 67. That is not where Hendrix burned his guitar up. Tom and I and Ed and Jerry and Henry, all of us were there, and where Jimmy burned his guitar was out in the middle of the stage. They built an extension out, and the guy who built the extension was Harrison Ford. Because at the time, he was a carpenter in Los Angeles.
Wow.
And
A photo to get.
and he,
Yeah.
Is that true?
he was
Why isn't he here? I should
what?
Did you know that?
Well, because there's no photo.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's great. I'd not known that, really.
It's
Yeah,
in my
so-
book.
And then, because last night Lou gave a talk at the Dolly Museum, and somebody in the audience said, "So Lou, is this?"
That was
thing-"
me, by the
Oh, that was you. Okay.
Lou, tell me.
So he says, "Is this an urban legend or is this true?"
Sounds just
And
like
it
that.
came straight from that gentleman's mouth. He said, "It's true."
That being one of those rich hippies we were talking about from
Yeah,
L.A. Yeah. Let me ask you all this, and I'll just open it up to this because we're starting to run out of time here. Monterey Pop happened. It was significant a little bit at the time, got some pub, and then it kind of went away as far as Woodstock. It was all about Woodstock and all of that. And then actually, as we were talking earlier, went away for maybe 20 years. And it's in the last 20 years that Monterey Pop has gotten more, people are looking back going, wow, that really was
starting to
significant.
pick up steam.
What triggered the relove? Is that a word?
Relove, that's good.
The reuptake or whatever.
Yeah, what happened there? Go ahead. Tom, what happened there to
Well,
make it significant again?
Yeah.
50 years.
Lou said it.
Yeah.
I heard Lou say this in down in LA at the Grammy Museum a few weeks ago, and he basically just said that, it's time. We need, with anything that's historic, you need a certain amount of time for things to happen in sequence after
Exactly.
this thing like Monterey, because when Monterey happened, we didn't have anything to compare it to because nothing like this had ever happened. I remember running into a guy in Carmel, a sculptor by the name of Don Buby, and it was probably about maybe a week or two afterwards. And he was just as happy about going to Monterey Pop as I was. I mean, the after effects were incredible.
Yes, they were.
Yeah, and I remember just seeing him and said, yeah, you're in Monterey, Yeah, wasn't it great? Oh, it was fantastic. I mean, that's what it was. It was, if anything at all, we just relived this wonderful kind of, it was a euphoria. I mean, I remember there was one moment by the second day, and I know there were certain things floating around in the air and all that, and I was busy trying to do this, and all of a sudden, something came over me, and I saw a friend of mine that I knew, a girl that there just was a casual acquaintance, and I saw her there, and I yelled out her name, and I just said, Priscilla, I want a hug. Can you give me a hug? I felt so good. I wanted I wanted to share the love. It sounds real hippy-dippy and airy-fairy and all that, but that was it. There was this
That was the whole vibe
Good
of the
vibe.
the
weekend.
vibe. I mean, it was the
Well,
vibe.
Monterey was the most beautiful concert I've ever been to.
Really?
Not only that, nobody'd heard of Janis, nobody'd heard of Jimmy.
Yeah.
We didn't know really about the Who, and all of that was introduced
Yes.
to the
Well,
world.
Janice made her name there.
Yeah.
So did
Yeah.
Otis, but he died.
There's a great.
It was so beautiful because everybody dressed up in these wonderful outfits.
Flowing.
Absolutely.
Looked like a
beautiful
Renaissance
outfits,
fair,
you
huh?
know, and then there was all these booths with people making jewelry and beadwork, and there was psychedelic God's eyes. And it was the most beautiful, calm, beautiful,
Yes.
you know, just
Absolutely.
great vibe, good music. Everything was beautiful about Monterey Pop.
I love you guys so much.
I think getting
I
getting
love
back
it,
to your
Dennis.
question,
Yeah, go.
I think it's a generational thing. What we experienced was, I mean, it's hard to describe the immediate acceptance that everybody felt with each other.
Yeah.
And it was like just such a pleasant, wonderful vibe, be it what you were wearing or what you were smoking or what you were listening to or where you were from. Everybody felt like one big family. Now, my daughter, who's a very, fine photographer and
Yeah.
director, she said, dealt with it okay. All right, Dad. Yeah, you're going to tell me about Monterey again. But the one who really was curious about it is my granddaughter. And I think when you grow up with a father who was at Monterey or this or did that, oh, Dad, you're going to tell those stories again. Whereas the granddaughter said, yeah, come on, tell me more. Because they are now very much in love with the 60s music.
Exactly.
And the vibration of the 60s.
You know what? You're absolutely right, because to touch on something that Henry said earlier, I live in Santa Cruz, and I went to Lou's event last night, and my girlfriend bought the CD. And when I left Santa Cruz, I put the CD in the player, and it just took me right back to those electrifying performances. And when Otis Redding came on, I just about lost it, because I remember him coming off of that stage, and he was so worried that people were not going to like him. He said, I'm an R&B artist, and here I am at a rock and roll show. And everybody's going, Otis, you're going to kill him. And as he's coming off the stage, he had steam coming off of his head. And there was this blue spotlight behind him. And as he's walking off the stage, the spotlight is illuminating the steam. And it was like coming off of him in waves. I see this apparition, just amazing. And today, you guys got to buy this CD, because and the mastering on it is perfect.
No.
What was the question?
Wants to know what
Is there
picture
one?
were they thinking of that they never took that they wish they had?
I thought he meant
no.
digitally.
I thought
What
no.
do we take? Did
I mean, of
know.
the festival, is there one we wish we'd have taken?
Oh, yeah, I have an answer
wait a
for that.
Wait. Okay, what's the question? During the concert?
No.
Definitely not.
No, but I couldn't photograph Jimmy because I was too short. So I regret that.
That's not right. Why were you too short?
I don't know, I didn't grow tall
No,
enough.
No, I don't mean why were you
no, the stage is
Stage was 7 feet.
Yeah.
Dennis.
Yes, Tom.
Okay, this is how high the stage is.
Okay.
That high.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah.
Okay? So if you weren't as smart as Ed, and I got to hand it to you, it's the first time
Ed got the chair.
about the chair. I knew he had the chair. I didn't know that he'd already, grabbed it and it was his personal stash over there. That's very...
Let me sum up that photo. You've heard it before. Location.
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 Go ahead.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So here's my experience. Well, imagine this is a folding...
No.
Don't do it.
Don't fall.
Don't do it.
Here's how I tried to
Oh, my God, he's
photograph...
gonna do it.
Here's how I tried to photograph Jimi Hendrix when he was burning his guitar. I had a chair. I had chosen to be over on the right side of the stage because I did not like this direct view looking up at somebody's nostrils. So I thought over on the far side I could have a lower angle and it was better. Unfortunately, there were all these mic stands in the way, and when Jimmy came out, I had Noel Redding's legs to deal with, and and one of the cameramen for D.A. Pennybacker. So what I did when all this commotion started, and I had gotten tired of doing this, and the way I started out was I kind of looked to see how far Jimmy was, and then I picked somebody in the audience that was the same distance, and I did an approximation, and I just focused on them, and then I took the camera up here, and I took about 10 shots. I was counting my film. Film was not cheap, and I figured one of these, maybe they'll all whatever, and so I took about 10 or so. One did turn out, and it is on one of Jimi Hendrix's albums that happened later on. But just that one, and I was very lucky. So that was my shot that I got of him. Now, when it happened, when he went over and he started to make all these gyrations in front of the amplifier and basically having sex with the amps and everything, then he turns around, he throws guitar down. That's when I was doing this, and I said, oh my God. So I got this chair out, and there was a photographer right next to me, Jill Gibson. And being a guy, and a gentleman at least, I said, you want to? And so she's here, right here, and I am literally with my left hand, you're going to be the side of the stage, with my left leg, I'm trying to balance, and I'm trying to shoot and hold on to the stage with my right hand. Wow. And at the same time, try and shoot with a 35 millimeter camera, Pentax, by the way, which is designed for the right hand. So I'm doing all this.
How does he remember this?
And that's why I didn't get the shot of Jimi Hendrix, which I wish I had done it.
So,
And he got it because he was right dead on.
And I was so confounded. I couldn't even
One
take
little
pictures.
other bit. Jimi Hendrix, he did a rehearsal without knowing it, on burning his guitar. About 2 weeks before, playing with The Who in London, he set his guitar on fire. Or in the first attempt, he tried to. And they did the Ronson lighter fluid, and he put so much on, and it didn't light, that when it did light, a 4-foot flame came up in front of him.
Wow.
And he had to be treated. He burned his hands and set part of the stage on fire. And that one didn't go so well. But the second time he did it at Monterey, it was flawless. It was perfect.
practice makes perfect.
And I've thought at times, had that first experience happened in Monterey, where he's sitting there, remember, he comes out, he sprinkles, it was beautifully choreographed. And in this wonderful movement of the Ronson lighter fluid and dousing it, and then one match, boom, boom, and then he leans back, and it's just, and he's fanning it and giving and sacrificing his guitar to his muse, and Ed Caraeff is right there looking at him in the face, and
There's Ed.
and he's doing this, and history is happening.
Did you guys hear Ed tell about
moments in rock and roll history.
So,
you don't know it at the time. Jerry,
But we didn't know at the time
Go ahead,
it
Jerry.
was going to be that.
Jerry, we got to wrap it up, but go ahead.
I just want to say one thing about that, and I'm hoping none of you experienced what Henry and I have experienced, but I'm sure there are pieces of film that were shot. I left for Europe in the summer of '68 and had my everything I shot in black and white from '65 to '68, quite a volume of work. It was left in a secure place. Some well-intentioned friends moved it, and there was a 2-week rainstorm in LA, and it got flooded. When I came back from Europe, my negatives were like 1 brick.
Wow.
So
that's
all those photographs are up here. I shot them.
that's too bad. I
But
just
like,
have one
they're up
quick
here.
question.
So my cautionary tale is, whatever you shoot, if you're shooting digital, back up, back up, back up.
Exactly.
If you have negatives, if you're going to put them in a garage, get some ammunition boxes from the gun store and put them in there because they're waterproof and they're fireproof.
Okay.
So that's something I wanted to say, not out of self-pity, but as a cautionary tale to others who may be shooting now or have stuff that they put away. Go back there, because someday you're going to find that's precious stuff.